Hey everyone, David DeSalle with the Financial Advisors Alliance. I'm super excited for the guest speaker that we have today for our masterclass, Kevin O'Connor. Kevin and I go way back. I think I met you back in 2011 when I was first
Yeah,
interning with the
that's right.
company that we were affiliated with. So I'm really excited to hear about your story, hear about your business. And for those of you who are listening, what's cool is you're going to be able to hear and see how Kevin's progressed through his career, but also where he focuses his practice today is very complementary to what we do. So I'm sure Kevin will be able to be a resource for us. Now, before we dive in, I'm going to let Kevin introduce himself and share a little bit of his story. But just so everyone's prepared, Kevin's probably one of the most high energy people. He's on some other stuff, which is pretty cool. So feel free to take out some notes. Feel free to pause the video, rewind if you missed something, because he's a super fast talker. But high energy, so buckle up and we'll get going. So Kevin, welcome.
How are you today? Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of
So,
course, of course. So yeah, I want to start off and just hear a little bit about, how you got started in your career and bring us through a bit of a timeline of where you are now, and we'll riff off of that.
that sounds great. Definitely. So, I actually started in this career a long time ago, and I feel like I was a wee child, almost by accident, quite honestly. I was working in a job that I didn't particularly love, and a friend of mine worked for an insurance carrier and said, you know what, you got to come over here. There's so much going on. There's so much growth and opportunity. Make it a go. So I did. I spent my year of prison time answering phones with a headset on every darn day, which was not too fun, but that got me into the marketing department. So I was able to work through retention and then through sales. This was for a health insurance carrier here locally in the Boston market. And then in 1999, I had the most incredible opportunity, which feels like, by the way, a long time ago. And some of you guys are probably not even in high school, which is totally cool. Still freaks me out.
I
But
was
nonetheless,
I was 9 years old, so just a little bit reality
are you
check for you.
kidding? All right. So that hurts a lot. That hurts, but nonetheless, it's all good. So, but I had an incredible opportunity to jump ships from the carrier side over to employee benefit brokerage, and I just absolutely loved the opportunity. I'm not going to lie, like many people that are on this call today, I was terrified for probably 18 months. I didn't know my elbow from my other side, but through just a lot of effort, determination, passion, I really learned what I was doing. I feel like I became kind of a master of the trade. I love it. I really do. And I love working with people. So yeah, for me, it's been great. And I've been on the brokerage side since 1999, which is wild.
Awesome, awesome. So I know that you're super high energy, both in the office and out of the office. So I'm curious to know what sort of activities are you participating in outside of the office, and how does that help you remain a high performer, in those four walls?
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough. I think that that's so important. And honestly, I lose sight of that, unfortunately. When I was younger in my career, it was all work. I really was not doing enough outside of work. And that's not a healthy balance for you, both physically and mentally. And it causes you to want to burn out, right? Because all you're doing is trying to realize, I've got to hit a number. I've got to make sure that I please so-and-so, what have you. But you have to have work-life balance. And for me, that was a big guilt issue for a bit there about taking time out of the office. But I like to challenge myself. I'm definitely somebody that is competitive outside of work. So I had a colleague of mine who I've known forever that was running the Boston Marathon. And, in the Boston market, we are definitely a little bit on the obnoxious side, I guess I would say. So I was like, what? If you can do that, I can do it. Come on, man. That's insane. So I ran the Boston Marathon 3 times, which was great. I loved it. I hate running, quite honestly, but I love camaraderie. I love a challenge, all that sort of stuff. Our trainings were always on, our long trainings were Saturday mornings in the winter in Boston, freezing cold, but a real great challenge. And then as I was starting to get a little bit older, my knees were wearing out a little bit. I got into triathlons. Triathlons were a ton of fun because it really mixes up the sport for you and what you're actually doing. I did the New York City Triathlon 3 times, which was a blast, quite honestly. And part of triathloning is cycling, and I just loved cycling. And a lot of people that knew that I was doing triathlons were like, let's just try out biking. So since then, that's really my true passion. And I do a number of very, very long rides for charity typically. So I've done 3 different rides that are actually, I just realized this year all in threes, 3 marathons, 3 triathlons, and 3 of these long charity rides. But
There you go.
yeah, these charity rides are anywhere from 500 to 550 miles, and it's all West Coast, and it's a blast. And you know, it's funny getting back to work-life balance. I used to have a real problem not being connected 24/7 to the business. But you know, when you're in the middle of Oregon and there's no cell service for miles away, you have to unplug. And it's weird. You start realizing that, you know, you're passionate about work, but you can be passionate outside too.
I'm curious to know, so I'll use Oregon as an example because you just brought it up. You know, when you're in the middle of nowhere, and I feel like you can apply that to both our business and your business, where you feel as if you're on an island sometimes. I guess, how are you able to persevere in terms of, you know, rather than pulling over to the side of the road and taking a break, or, you know, cutting out early on a specific day where, you know, the business kind of knocks you on your butt? Like, what are you reminding yourself of to be able to persevere through those tough times?
That's an awesome analogy, actually. Just as you were saying it right now, like some of these rides, you know, it's 100 degrees and you're riding like 90 miles, and you're in the middle of flats on a high desert plain, and you know there's a huge mountain coming up. And honestly, it's literally the truth. I put my head down. I know I'm in a straight line. I'm usually looking at the line on the road of where the bike path or lane is, and I'm just pumping. And I start counting. Literally, I just start counting my strides. You know, 1, 2, 3, and I just keep going and realizing you're gonna take your head up, but you can't just take your eye off that prize of realizing it's going to get better. You're in pain. You're kind of sick of doing what you're doing. You haven't had a break in you know, however many hours, days, what have you. I know there's going to be a mountain that's coming up ahead, and you just got to climb and climb and climb. And there's nothing more exhilarating than being at the top, seeing the view out in Oregon, these huge mountains, and taking the glide back down. But I do like to actually pedal on the downhill because I do like the action of being fun and fast. It doesn't stop. But I think that's definitely part of what we do day in and day out, right? I mean, you've got these long, dry spells where you're just like, oh man, this is torture. Maybe I'm not loving what I'm doing right now, but it's going to change. It definitely is. If you keep your activity up and you keep doing what you're doing, there's going to be mountains and there's going to be awesome, awesome vistas. And that's kind of part of the business. You know, it really is.
Well, I think it's unique what you had said about on the downhill, you're still pedaling. And I think that that's, so you can easily relate that to the business, where I think that, you know, as we're doing well, we forget that, you know, we had worked so hard to actually get to that point, and the fruits of our labor are now coming. So, you know, whenever things are going well, I always encourage, you know, the people that I coach, and I'm sure you do as well, that's when you put your foot on the gas, or in your case, that's when you continue to pedal, so that, you know, you're creating that momentum for, you know, that next flat or that next uphill climb. So I think that there's a ton of ways that you can tie those things together. So I'm curious to know, you know, and for the people that are watching this video, you know, you had mentioned that, you know, you're on the brokerage side dealing with health insurance and other products and services. So if you could dive a little bit deeper into your actual business model, the types of products that you guys focus on, the types of companies that you work with, and then I'll just ask some pinpointed questions as we go throughout the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So my company is called One Digital Health and Benefits. We specialize in employee benefits, literally. So we work with employers every day, trying to help them figure out the challenges they have in regards to offering benefits. So things like medical insurance, dental insurance, short-term disability, long-term disability, life insurance. And there's a ton of compliance issues that go around those that we deal with. We deal with communications and onboarding issues. It's definitely pretty well-rounded as far as what we do. I love it because the challenge is that with ACA, the Affordable Care Act, throughout the U.S., our role has never been more needed by any organization ever, between understanding what the guidelines are, what my compliance issues will be. Second to that is the price points for which benefits are costing businesses. It's stifling, hands down. So although I love my job, I love what we do, I love the ability to go in and have impact and affect with employers and helping them with their spend, I do not like the rate of increase. But that's where we get very strategic as far as how can we make sure that we're mitigating that cost impact, improving benefits as necessary, but most importantly, understanding the true need of that employer. So it's pretty fun.
Awesome. What size companies do you work with? Do you work in particular industries, or do you cast a wide net? Like or who's your target market?
Yeah. So for us as One Digital, we can work essentially with any size organization. So many people that are in the financial planning area of the world, they may have a lot of small businesses, even down to 2 lives, 1 life, what have you. One Digital as a company is able to handle those organizations, which is great because let's face it, if you're working on a financial plan for a business owner and they've got 3, 4, 5 employees, they might have a great situation for you from a planning perspective. The benefits are something that you have to overcome, and how do you do that? One Digital can do that as a business, which is great. We have a whole what we call a sales desk function, which is great. For myself personally, where I like to be is anywhere from 25 to 500 employees at this point. And the reason why is that you have much more impact for what's going on for that group. The market opens up as far as opportunities for different plan designs, funding metrics. It just gets so much more like sexy. I can't believe I'm saying that about health insurance, but it's true.
Now, are you able to work with really any advisor? What sort of licenses do we need to be able to refer business to you? Like, how do we prepare ourselves to be able to partner with you?
Yeah. For us, as far as a partnership approach, and first off, most of my career has always been about partnership and working alongside people. I just feel like from a distribution model and partnership, I love doing that because you've got essentially people that you're helping, not just at the employer level, but from the financial representative perspective as well. So I love doing that. In order for a financial rep to be prepared and to work with a company like ours on a national basis, by the way. So I know we talked about do we specialize in any one area? Geographically, we cover the entire US, which is fantastic. And then industries, we tend to cover every industry out there. Some industries are very difficult to work with. It's a high turnover situation, but that is what it is. From a financial rep perspective, to work with us, you just need to have your life accident and health license. That's it. And for most financial reps, you're going to have that anyway, depending on your state guidelines. It might be a slightly different license, but that's all you need to work with us.
Okay, cool. And for some of us who haven't worked with you before, I'm going to ask a series of questions. If you can share with me, and I know it's going to be across the board as it relates to compensation, so feel free to be general, okay? But like, what does and pick a number like a 25 or a 50 or 100 person company, whatever it may be. If you can share from a rough standpoint what that compensation looks like, depending on the products and services that you're offering, and then maybe you can finish up that portion with a little mini case study of an advisor that's sort of fresh in your mind that you've worked with and what their compensation looks like based on the business they referred you.
Sure. So similar to a financial sale itself, your revenue that you have come in is going to vary depending on the size of the case, right? So premium equals revenue, so on and so forth. So for us in general, total, kind of finger in the wind about compensation, the financial rep, the split to the financial rep is typically going to be anywhere from $8 a month to $12 a month, depending on what is sold. So if it's medical with dental and disability and life insurance, it's going to be on the higher end of that. If it's just medical insurance and a larger group, so more than 10 employees, it's going to be more like $8, $9 in that range. Now that varies.
And that's per employee, correct?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's per employee
Okay.
per month. Yeah, all of a sudden, how many people just deleted, right? I'm out. Thanks for playing. Don't want to do that stuff. No, it actually, from a benefits perspective, it can be extremely lucrative. And the reason why is if I'm working with a 200 life company and all of a sudden you're making, say, $10 a month per employee, per covered employee, do the math, right? $2,000 a month for essentially, in my mind, a referral to that business. And I always like it when that financial rep person, anybody that's related to the organization and introduced us, we just want them to continue to be involved, to have a relationship with the C-suite, those people that are actually making decisions, because that's kind of why we're splitting the revenue.
Okay, cool.
Just another point too. So if we're working on a 2 and a 3 life company, again, do the math. It's $30 a month, not even enough to fill like a tank of gas. I look at it from a company perspective. If that financial rep has up market opportunity, try to go up market for sure. I know if you're tethered up with an employee benefit broker and advisor like us, you're going to feel confident introducing us into that relationship, which I think is super important. So instead of $10 a month on 3 people, make it $10 a month on 300 people. The math is pretty much exact there.
Okay, cool. Now, if you were to just to sort of, I guess, think abundantly and share a huge success story, I'm curious to know not who the advisor is, but I'm curious to know an advisor that you've worked with. What's the most that you're stroking them a check for on a monthly basis based on the business that they've referred you? Because I think that we're so wrapped up in the life, the disability, the investment and advisory business. And this is a whole side of revenue that a lot of us haven't even thought of.
Yeah,
and I think that if you're able to share that story, it's going to expand our minds and allow us to further our impact and in turn, increase our lifestyle as well.
No, I totally agree with you on that. So case in point, first and foremost, for people that are in kind of this referral network opportunity, abundance mentality is what makes that person successful, hands down. And as I tell most people, you don't have to be an expert in everything. In fact, you really shouldn't be. I deal with employee benefits really well, but I've been around enough other partners of mine, whether it be, the financial planning side, 401k, PNC, what have you, that I can talk a little bit about their game. But most importantly, I can certainly set up a conversation where it's important for whoever I'm working with to want to speak to one of these advisors that I'm bringing in. So I think that that's most important. From an abundance mentality, I look at it this way. If your natural market includes business owners or those people that have a C-level, so a C-suite presence, so I'm a CEO, a CIO, whatever, those are the people that you want to be thinking about engaging an employee benefit strategy into. As far as compensation size, we pay our commissions on a monthly basis. So as long as we've been paid, you're paid, which I think is really, really important. As far as size of check, there's no reason that if somebody's focused in this space that they can't be pulling in 10 grand a month. Literally, that's a very high number. There's not a lot of people that do that. It certainly is possible. The reason that I say that it's not everybody is doing it is that you have your normal world as well, right? So you're making sure you're trying to do financial planning and otherwise. But the reality is you should be able to supplement your income. And, in my earlier days at my first brokerage firm, when I would talk to a lot of our financial reps, I would always tell them, hey, you know what? Try to set a goal in mind. I maybe want to pay for my car payment, or maybe I want to make it so that I've got my car payment plus insurance, or for those people that have a staff, maybe I want to make it so that I'm actually funding the salary of one of my lower wage people. There's definitely ways that you can do it. When my comp model was different than it is right now and I was receiving commissions, I used that money entirely to be able to buy a second home, which was freaking incredible. Like, to be able to do that when you're in your early 30s is great. And so there's definitely the opportunity to make a ton of money. I would say that most people that are like in the group space itself, they're chugging around, 3,000, 4,000 a month for essentially just having abundant mentality, introducing us when it's appropriate to introduce us. And I think that's most important. So one thing I'd also point out is that for a lot of people, they look at the money that they receive from a group basis and think like, okay, so that's what I'm making on the group side of the house. And by the way, group insurance just means employer group coverage, and that's what I work on. Alongside that, in that abundance theory, the mentality of being abundant thinking, definitely that person wants to make sure that they understand, while we at One Digital or whoever you partner with, they're working on the employee benefit side. What else is going on with that organization where your products that you specialize in should be introduced? And I think that that's what's so important here. To me, working with group insurance means that you've opened up the door for other opportunities for you to sell your product. As I say, it's to grow your farm, right? So you might specialize in long-term care or term life insurance or whole life planning or financial plan, whatever it is. Those products are certainly going to be necessary to anybody in that organization. So think abundantly. It's not just about the check you get from us. It's about making sure that you can grow your business. And then thirdly, which is in my mind priceless, it's maintaining that relationship, getting more hooks into that opportunity itself. But make sure that you're partnering with people that you trust and that for me is so big. So.
Awesome. Now, I know that a lot of what you do, and specifically how you run your practice, helps us, I guess, for lack of a better word, sell our services as well. So before we get to what that looks like, I'm curious to know, what's the first step for someone like us to, like, how do we identify an opportunity? How do we knock on that door? What's the language that we use? How do we tee you up to be able to generate a conversation? Because I think that that's what holds a lot of people back, is we haven't had that specific training on how to tee up that product. So I'm curious to know what suggestions and advice you have for us as we begin thinking about entering into this space.
I think it's such a great question, and the answer is going to be a little bit bizarre. The language itself can be a little bit tricky for some people, and the fear of the unknown. As I joke all the time to anybody that I'm working with, I don't care that they don't know how to spell HMO. I really don't. Like, that's my whole role. It's what I'm supposed to be doing. What I do want for somebody to have is just a lot of enthusiasm and understand when there is a need that's there. And usually the conversation is going to be along the lines of, hey, Joe or Mary or whoever it is that I'm working with, obviously we're working together on this personal plan or what have you, insert your product. But I understand and recognize there's a bigger need here from a business perspective. And from your spend on employee benefits, it's probably your second largest expense. You make widgets. Why should benefits be your second or your third largest expense to run a business? In my world, making sure that I'm advising you correctly, I want to make sure that you're in front of the people that I trust most to work on your employee benefits and to at least give you an opinion about what they think is going well or potentially could go differently. Would you be open to an appointment with my partner, Kevin O'Connor, or insert whoever you're working with? That for me is what it's about. You don't have to worry about the things that we do. And I want to talk a little bit about that just to get in the mindset of an employer. But the biggest thing is having enthusiasm and making sure they realize you're in it for the right reasons. You're not in it because you're getting $10 a month or whatever the number is going to be. That's honestly, that's the gravy on top. It's getting up that mountain, right? That really is what it's all about. Some of those conversations can be difficult. For some people, they may not have that relationship yet built with a business. I've worked with a lot of partners of mine that actually we've led with employee benefits. So that advisor hasn't been able to get in front of that particular person for personal products or whatever it is, whatever else it is that they're trying to pitch. But employee benefits can be a huge door opener. Why? It's super expensive. It's super complicated. People can't stand their broker, which is really difficult. As I always say, I'm like, we just do group benefits. You can still have fun. Like, there's no reason that it's got to be, just dry and awful. Also, we do have some groups that, the renewals are torture and we hate it, but we're really upfront about this is what's going on and why, and what can we do to make this better equation for you. So, yeah. So again, back to, for anybody that's kind of listening right now, how do I get into that space? The thing that I would just really key in on or hone in on is, who is the decision maker for benefits within that organization? It's usually going to be the CFO. Even though they don't want to talk to anybody in HR, or they don't want to talk to anybody like an employee in an HR type of function, they control the purse strings, second largest expense. You better believe they're interested in the conversation.
Awesome. Now, what are you, so we get the initial conversation, right? And I think just to take a quick step back before I say what I'm going to say, I think that what you had mentioned a couple minutes ago is super important. We can't go into the conversation with commission breath because it stinks. To your point of 8 or 10 or 12 bucks a month. I'm
going to steal that, by the way. I'm going to steal that.
Hey, it's all yours. Yep, I'm stealing plenty of your stuff too. So I think that you have to go in with the right intentions, where you truly want to have an impact and you care for, the employees, even if you don't know them, they're human beings, right? So you want to make sure that they have top-notch benefits and it's not costing them an arm and a leg. So I think that if you lead with your heart, right, you're going to walk away with their pocketbook, so to speak.
Totally.
And I think that if you do the reverse, it may not come off as genuine as maybe you had hoped. So, just as a little plug there for everyone who's listening, whether it's group benefits or your own personal practice, always lead with them in mind, knowing that all of your stuff will be taken care of along the way. So I'm curious to know, when you're in the conversation, right? And I'm sure you have a series of meetings, especially if you're with a large company, explaining everything, teeing everything up. What are you doing to complement our services? Yeah. So let's assume that they're not clients of ours already. How are you planting seeds along the way that will allow us to implement some of the strategies that we have in our pocket?
Yeah. Right there, to me, that's the magic bullet of an entire relationship that's referral based like this. So before any meeting we have, I always have a conversation with whoever the referral source is. Tell me how you set this up. Tell me what your goals are trying to get in here. Is this a long-term client or somebody that's new to you? And what's your goal? And then with that, knowing that in mind, I'm going to bring up those topics as I can throughout that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing also that I tell a lot of people, we might be talking today to set a meeting in 3 weeks from now. You can guarantee about 12 minutes before start time for that meeting, I'm going to be on the phone with you or in the lobby talking with you about bring me back to everything we talked about before, just so that then you're sharp,
Mm-hmm.
nothing else is on your mind but what you're talking about. And then when we're in that meeting, if I know somebody's trying to sell, say, long-term disability, as I get around to just, some of the things that we tee up with our conversations that are meant to be thought-provoking, obviously, and a little bit provocative, I'm going to start asking about long-term disability. And I'll plant, just as an example, I'll plant seeds in there that say, hey, group long-term disability is there for a reason. It helps an employer feel not responsible if somebody becomes disabled to have to continue to pay them a level of income for a period. But there's going to be contract limitations in there that don't make it as strong for you than a personal plan would. And then I'll usually say, so you do have personal planning or protection in place, correct? No. What? You need to have that in place. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I pivot right away from the employee benefits and
Just
say,
as little drips along the way.
oh yeah, totally. It's just trips like that because I don't have any skin in that game. I don't mind, but I'm super passionate about disability and financial planning, retirement savings, all those things that the people that we work with, that I work alongside with actually do. So yeah, it's those drips along the way. And then there's times that we're in meetings where, we uncover things that, maybe we're talking to a population and we realize that the age factor is quite high. So in our market, there's a lot of what we call working age. So I'm over the age of 65, but I'm still working full time. To me, that's an incredible opportunity for a couple of things. Most importantly is long-term care insurance. Have they had that conversation yet? Is there an opportunity for us to do what we call a brown bag lunch or some other sort of educational session for what we call financial wellness, which should be part of anybody's business plan, or
Mm-hmm.
employee benefit package, so that then the financial rep or whoever we're working with can come in and have an audience of more than just one person. So we're setting up that need through multiple channels. It all of a sudden gives it credibility, honestly. So, and I think that's what's most important. We want to make sure that we are building up whatever your process is as well.
Awesome. I'm going to guess here, but I'm guessing that a number of the companies that you guys work with, it's replacing a pre-existing relationship. It's not like you're running around and working exclusively with startups, right?
Yes.
So I'm curious to know, when you get feedback from those companies, or even before that, when you just hear their pain points, how do you, or I guess if you could describe to us what your competitive advantage is, or how you differentiate from some of their other relationships in the past, or what you hear from them, I think that would be cool, because when we tee up that conversation, we can say, hey, I'm sure, in the past you've experienced X, Y, and Z. Let me talk to you about Kevin and his team and why they're different. So if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just to set up that conversation for anybody, every employer except for startup will have a broker relationship. Hands down, they're going to have a broker relationship. And if that broker is doing a very good job, they'll have somebody that they're tight with, right? It's going to be a strong relationship and otherwise. So in almost every case that we go into, we're trying to unseat somebody else. And I approach that from a very cautious perspective. I don't go in and say, oh, geez, they do the worst job. Did you see them in the print? Like, I don't do that at all. I just am really clear and I explain, hey, it's great that you've got a strong relationship. I like that because it tells me or shows me that you value a broker, which is great. What I want to do today is not talk about what I think some of their weaknesses may be, but talk about our platform, acknowledge that there is a relationship there, but also look to make sure that there's not a complacency situation that's going on, because that's really important. And then I usually will tie in,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, this is not to disrespect the person that you're with right now, obviously by even seeing me, but at the end of the day, you see how expensive your benefits are. They are your second or your third largest expense, and you should certainly know what's going on in the marketplace and hear a different opinion. And then from there, quite honestly, at One Digital, I'm super excited to be with a firm like this because we are like thought leaders. There's no doubt about it. We have a whole fresh thinking approach. We're optimistic about our future, which, 7, 8, 10 years ago, that wasn't so easy to say. We didn't know what was happening with the ACA and what's going to go on, but we as a company are not afraid to really think outside the box differently. So when I start my conversation, I start trying to figure out from the employer's perspective, what is it that's mattering most to them? And it's always going to come down to cost number one, having better benefits. Better benefits doesn't mean spending more money. Undoubtedly, they have some sort of administrative headache that's going on. So I always feel bad when I'm working with a CFO and we've got, the HR person in there as well. he or she doesn't want to expose what their weaknesses are in front of their boss, right? So I just address it
Right.
in order to say that it's extremely complex, and any organization out there has their administrative challenges. They've got their headaches, and we're here to make sure that we help out with that aspect. We also talk about making sure that they're in compliance. Compliance right now is huge among employee benefit plans, and it's a very daunting and honestly scary situation, but we have a lot of compliance tools that we bring to them. And then finally is having healthy people. So what are we doing about our population to mitigate their risk and to make sure that we're in a better claim situation down the road? From there, kind of understanding what their needs will be. And I don't just kind of like lay it right out. I say, I have a conversation with them, tell me what your biggest pain points are, and then I'll bring in these other things. And then from there, we talk about what we call our take charge strategy. So if I'm an organization that I have, 200 employees, and, I think about my strategy around benefits is to mitigate and put my head underneath the counter when I've got a 20% renewal coming, that's a strategy. We just don't think it's the right strategy, right? It's not really taking charge of what's going on for their future. So we have a whole take charge strategy where we start analyzing different components of their plan, whether it be their plan design, the funding metrics, again, what's happening for compliance, technology advantages that they have. And it's looking and understanding for them that we've got their back. When we look at their employee benefit package, we don't expect them to be experts in this field because they're trying to push more widgets out the door. Every business has their goals. It's not necessarily about benefits. But for our business, it's all benefits. That's what we do. And we're there to make sure that they understand, hey, we got you on this stuff. Sometimes it's difficult conversations, honestly, because, you've got to tell some people some things that maybe they don't want to hear, but they need to. As you guys know that with financial planning and what you do, there's a lot of times that, you got to deliver difficult messages, but that's our job. That's how it is. And from that, so while we're not trying to disparage competition, we'll certainly bring up like, okay, so we have this alternative funding option that's out here. Geez, if we had been doing this for a couple of years, I think, you might be able to be in a different position, whatever. So we're trying to recognize that, wow, you know what? We have a different approach that is probably worth listening to further. So.
Awesome. So before we wrap up, just two final questions. First, and I'll bring up the other one once we get the answer on this. Is there a particular time of year that is best suited to bring up this conversation around renewal time? And on top of that, is there anything that would prevent an employer from making a switch based on, contracts and stuff like that?
Yeah, such a great question. So every plan that's out there has an annual renewal period. So it's going to renew every 12 months. And it's not always on the calendar year. So depending on the size of the group, I'm going to kind of go off to the left here for a second. If the group has more than 100 employees, enrolled employees, we have access to public data that tells us a bit about that group, how many are enrolled, who their current board, total compensation, carrier that they have, renewal date, who's signing the document, that tells us who's in the C-suite. So we can do a little bit of recon on those organizations. If that group renews on January 1, honestly, I want to be seeing them now. And most people are like, so obviously we're recording this in February. Don't know when people are going to see this, but, I'm going to want to see them now. And most people are like, but the renewal's not for 10 months, right? Well, when you back into the renewal, they should be making renewal decisions like August, September, maybe October. We don't want to get introduced a week before the decision's supposed to be made. We want to be having these conversations now that I call blue sky conversations. So it's literally like we're not under the pressure of having this torturous renewal. Instead, we can talk to them about, these are things that we do day in and day out. These are the things that you should be considering outside of the renewal period. And that's going to be if it's north of 100 lives. I want to see them really anywhere, call it between 10 and 8 months ahead of the renewal. There are smaller organizations that, you might be seeing them 2 months ahead of time, and that's okay. There's some introductions that we have that, they're right in the renewal process right now. If we're lucky enough to get a meeting, we usually go in and say, look, we so appreciate your taking time to see us. We want to learn a little bit about you, have you learn a little bit about us. And quite honestly, it probably is not going to make sense for us, you and I, the employer and myself, to try to make a decision before your renewal. It just really is T-boning their process, and it's not fair to the employer. And I think instantly that builds credibility because you are kind of messing it up for them. It really is. But we're going to ask to see them after the renewal. And a tip that I have for anybody that's in our business, before you leave that meeting, schedule your next meeting. Okay? It's so much easier to change the time than call them back in 10 weeks and say, hey, remember us? It's just one of those things.
Right. Now, is there anything that prevents them? So can they, if their renewals say in January, are they able to renew earlier than that, or do they have to contractually wait until that renewal date?
No, they don't. They don't have to contractually wait till the renewal date. Their contract will likely say they need to give 30 days notice to the incumbent carrier.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost never honored. Literally almost never honored. There's one time I've seen that in a long time of being in the business, that needed to be done. So they can change at any point in time. More importantly, if they're in the right plan or the right carrier right now, we might suggest to them changing their broker designation. So maybe they're working with somebody today that's not given the value and the proposition that we're able to provide for them. That organization can change brokers at any point in time. And it's very simple to do. It's a simple templated letter that they just sign, printed on letterhead, and that appoints us. Literally, that broker of record letter hires us and it fires us. So, this is obviously for us, we don't have any contracts. Shuckaroony, right?
I hear you. So to wrap it up, and I'm somewhat putting you on the spot here, and you can answer the question based on like a payout or value provided. You can answer the question based on maybe money saved on their bottom line. But I'm curious to know, and you don't have to share, company specifics, but any sort of impact stories that you have with the planning that you do for companies. I think that a lot of us are able to thrive off of impact. So I think that this can motivate us. And it's until we have our own story, we can steal yours, right? As we continue to prospect in this marketplace. So
totally. Yeah, great question. And there's actually going to be two answers to this because group size determines the market of which they're rated in. So if the group has 50 or fewer eligible employees, it's small group market in Massachusetts anyway, in most states actually. And what that means is the rates are actually based entirely on demographics. So I can't go in and negotiate and say, hey, but we give you a lot of business, blah, blah, blah. They're growing, they're not, none of that. But so most people will say, so it's the same rate. What value do you provide? Which our value proposition is enormous in what it is that we do. And if you're working with any organization out there, you're going to want to make sure their value proposition is great. Specifically about the money though, we can talk to them about, are you in the right plan right now? Is this properly impacting your employees? We do a whole demographic analysis that will show us where their employee dates of birth ranges are. So if we have a more seasoned group, older group, the plan design might not be rich enough for those people. No, that employee population might be willing to pay more. If we get into a more millennial type of a population, one of my groups I'm working with right now, their millennial percentage is 86% of their people are millennials. That's insanely young. They're not going to value their insurance, but they're certainly going to value other things like pet insurance. What? I'm a business. Why do I have to offer pet insurance? Because guess what? When Billy and Johnny leave the work today, they're going to walk their dog who's sick. That's what they care about, Or what about instead of paying so much on health insurance, set up some sort of a student loan reimbursement mechanism? Okay. Well, if you're in a tough to hire industry and you're competing against the IBMs of the world, got to do something different. They're not going to come to you just because you allow dogs in your office and you've got a foosball table, right? There's going to be other things you need to do. So that's going to be important. So again, while we might not be able to impact price, we can certainly impact the design and making sure that those benefits fit the culture of the organization. And it's amazing how many companies we go into, they don't have any concept about their benefits impacting their culture. So it's kind of wild when we see that. So that's that. And we get into larger group, we get into claims analytics and all this other fun stuff. We have two different programs that are developed by us. We actually have them trademarked as far as tools to be able to help plans in their savings. There are some opportunities when we've seen renewals coming in at 23 and 24% that we've been able to get down to 2% and 3%. And that's a huge value add. And it's because of the analytics and the data. It's not us just beating on a carrier to say you have to bring it down. It's about understanding actually, in fact, the metrics are much different. And this is why we show them our work and how we actually come at it. We don't do that in an obnoxious way. Our carriers are partners very much so, but we're not partners in the same bed. We're just partners realizing we've got a need for a client to get here. And they know when we meet business, hey, this is where it is. So yeah, so from an impact perspective, those are really two different avenues. I wish I could say it in 5 words or less. Not happening.
No, that's awesome. And for everyone listening today, this video, you're probably watching it on our YouTube channel, and you either found it on there or you found it in our Facebook group. So as you guys have questions or thoughts or ideas, feel free to comment on the video directly, or feel free to post a question or feedback in the Facebook group itself. I know Kevin's a part of the group. And obviously I am as well. So one of us will be able to get to that question. I'll also include, Kevin, if it's okay with you, your email address and basically your basic contact information so people can reach out if they feel as if they have an opportunity for you to partner with them. I think that would be a great resource to be able to have that line of communication open.
Definitely. I would love that. I'd welcome that. Yeah, definitely. Hey, and by the way, just a shout out for you, Dave, doing what you're doing here. I think this is fantastic. So I'm really thrilled to be a part of this network, this alliance. And I just welcome everybody's comments for sure. And if there's ways that I can help you out, great. And know that I'll be calling on your skills also. So Financial Advisors Alliance, good stuff.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And this won't be the last video that we have, I'm sure. So we'll have maybe some more specific workshops. Maybe we can actually do a video in the future, Kevin, going through maybe like a mock process and a mock company, so people can sort of see exactly what that process looks like. And what I think would happen with that, I'm literally just thinking of this now, it's pretty cool. What would happen with that is they're going to be like, oh, my dad works at a company just like that, right? Or these people that are in our inner circle, it's like everyone works for a company. So if we can share a story based on a case study, I think that would be super valuable. So we'll make sure to put that in the book.
Totally agree. Awesome. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, enjoy, of course, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat soon.
Awesome. Thanks.